Hi, and welcome to the 2020 Economic Recession and Preparation Channel. I'm your host, Tony. Thank you for joining me today. Today, I want to talk about at least four major factors leading toward the Second Great Depression. And this was an article on theatlantic.com, a very great and inspiring article. As you know, the American economy was reopening. Many states continued to lift their stay-at-home orders, but then a second wave of this sickness pandemic came upon us, and things began to close back down again, and the hope of a V-shaped recovery and a rebound was dampened by not only the non-extension of the rent moratoriums, but the unemployment benefits, $600 unemployment extra benefits running out as well, as long with the 1.1 million jobs being lost weekly that have derailed the second V-shaped recovery that hopes the dreams that were going along. Now, at least four major factors are terrifying economists and weighing on the recovery: the household fiscal debt crisis, the great small business die-off, the state and local budget shortfall, and the lingering sickness pandemic that appears to be lingering more than 1 year. Now, so back in March, we were told to shelter in place, and this has been the 9th month of this pandemic, which things have nearly frozen this economy and frozen most people in place. Nearly 40% of low-wage workers lost their jobs in March, and now we have over 60 million people unemployed, with the official numbers around 45 million, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So now we were faced with this historic catastrophe. The United States mounted a historic response with two coronavirus packages totaling upwards of $11 trillion total up to this date in late August. So now this means that households are headed for a cliff as debt loads reach, the credit cards are maxed out, and as everyone will be affected equally, from rich workers, office jobs, white collar, blue collar workers, and even wealthy families will be shifting their stock portfolios around and everything around, preparing for winter, because as they say in Game of Thrones, winter is coming. Along with this, the steep decline in consumer spending and the consumer confidence index, which have already fallen more than 10 points in July, down to 84.5, will hasten the small business failure. That's the second factor weighing on this weak economy. The Paycheck Protection Program and other federal initiatives shoved an oxygen mask on companies, providing a short-term relief for a long-term pain situation. But still, many businesses, even if they had customers coming into the center, they did not make up for the revenue shortfall. On top of that, they realized that they would have to pay back some of these loans that they've gotten from the Small Business Administration, and it was just too much to bear, leading to an all-time record high bankruptcy filing for the month of July. And the Paycheck Protection Program did not include much aid for businesses with significant non-payroll overhead costs, such as restaurants in high-cost cities like Chicago, New York, LA, DC, Houston. This means that many businesses will fail if customers even fail to come back to return. An estimated 100,000 small companies have shut their doors permanently, never to reopen again. On top of that, numerous businesses, from airlines, restaurants, live events businesses, hotels, private schools, oil and gas companies, face severe and stubborn slumps. We're talking 5-year recoveries and more recoveries in some of these industries. As a matter of fact, Delta Airlines, one of the U.S.-based airlines who fared well last time during the 2008 recession, is saying already, the CEO is saying that they're going to have to cut jobs starting in October, that layoffs will become effective starting in October, even despite the bailout that the airlines have gotten. And United and Southwest have also considered furloughing or laying off workers as early as October. So winter is coming. Students are not willing to pay as much for online learning as in-person instruction. So we have students demanding at these Ivy League schools, or even regular university schools, from University of Pennsylvania and Harvard and Columbia to Florida State and Ohio State, students are demanding that they do not pay as much tuition for their online learning as they were in-person instruction. They're demanding room and board charges to be returned and refunded to their account, in addition to the refund check that they're expecting next month. as an abbreviated semester gets underway. Companies are no longer financing travel to these conferences and sales meetings, as they're cutting back and stripping their budget down to the bare bones. The only thing companies want to spend money on right now is stock buybacks, as we know. Concerts and festivals are not expected to restart until scientists develop an adequate vaccine. Economists expect that 42% of recently let go will not return to their former employees. Let me repeat that. 42% of people that are recently let go will not return to their former employers. So we have a situation where we have no job creation. We have massive debt, corporate debt, consumer debt, household debt. And a third factor behind the possible second Great Depression, which is coming up soon, is the budget crisis facing these states and cities. The federal government does not have to balance its budget, as we know, year to year. It can spend more than it takes in, which it is doing by massive amounts. Yet every state but Vermont and most cities and towns are required to remain in the black. Right now, sales taxes, real estate taxes, transfer taxes, income taxes, fines and fees such as camera parking tickets and all kind of city fees, they are collapsing massively right now. And local governments are expected to deal with a budget gap totaling $1 trillion this year. And without help from Washington, D.C., this most definitely will mean service cuts and job losses. There will be cuts in retirement pensions, possibly. There will be cuts in public service, public works. There will be cuts in school budgets, those that choose to have teachers that have to go into these schools to work despite the sickness pandemic risk. There will be cuts to the police funding in a lot of these cities and counties, states, and the crime will go up, and this will lead to job losses, massive job losses. It is estimated that 5.3 million additional job losses are to be lost through the remainder of the next 2 months as we head into election season. The shrinking of the government at the state and local level, of course, has already started, as Congress weighs in the balance on whether to provide more fiscal aid. Michigan is facing a $3 billion budget gap and a $4 billion one next year. And it's tried to do a work share plan, and it's tried to buy out the employees and have them accept a partial furlough, but to no avail. In New Jersey, the government has asked 100,000 public workers to move to abbreviated schedules, a kind of a telework hybrid schedule. Schools have already let go more workers than they did during the Great Recession of 2008 and 2009, with nearly 500,000 positions lost just this year. And we still have 4 more months left in this year, folks. And this is going to be an absolute disaster for families. We have rolling small business failures, which is the backbone of the U.S. economy. It is not the backbone of the U.S. economy is found in the stock market. Remember, over half of the companies in the U.S. are privately owned. They're not listed on the stock market, the Dow Jones or S&P 500 or the Russell K 1K. A budget crisis for state and local governments is bad enough, but an individual financial crisis for families is enough to send any economy into a Great Depression. They say when your neighbor loses your job, the common cliche is when your neighbor loses your job, it's a recession. When you lose your job, it's a depression, folks. And now, on top of it all, they have to spend the U.S. government spent so much money managing a pandemic that could possibly been created by our overseas friends that we like to call China. And they're spending $20 trillion already on vaccine research and all kind of things like that nature. The United States has imposed shelter-in-place procedures that are clearly not working, as we're number 1 in the sickness pandemic cases and spreading around the world. So on top of that, we have a economic health crisis and a public health crisis marriage joining forces to bring a second Great Depression, which is not inevitable, but it is very possible, and it is on the way as early as first and second quarter of 2021, when Congress fails to extend unemployment insurance, when Congress both sides fail to extend stimulus plans and fail to create new jobs or a new deal to put American families back to work, to put Americans first. They are putting themselves first in their pocketbooks and their desires, and not Americans first. This collapse will be 10 years or more. Get prepared now. There is no rebound that's underway. It's all smoke and mirrors. Smoke and mirrors for an agenda to change America into a socialist, communist, hybrid nation. And that is the agenda, to take away every small business, every ounce of economic independence, and make you dependent upon this new technocratic, autocratic society. We can resist. We can prepare today, but we must build up our nest early, just like squirrels. They prepare in the summer for the winter. Winter is coming, folks. Get prepared. Stay blessed, and I'll see you soon.